This is the Roller Coaster Podcast, and I'm your host, Lucy Q. Life is a wild ride. It has twists and turns. It's scary, exciting, and downright fun. So throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride.
Do you hear that whisper? That little voice that tugs at your heart, telling you to start living your best life. If that sounds like you, then now is the time to join Nectar Growth. It's the only place online where you can connect with and learn from great coaches with different areas of expertise. Why live another day not believing that you're enough, not seeing all that is possible for you? Why live another day dimming your own light? Nectar is the perfect place for you to discover the real you and uncover who you're meant to be. Life is a journey that we are not meant to walk alone. Nectar gives you a nurturing and supportive community to walk with you on your journey. Start living your best life and see what is truly possible. Come join us at nectargrowth.com. You know you're worth it. Are you curious about hypnotherapy? I am. To be able to tap into your subconscious mind and initiate change at the very source and get to the heart of the matter? Joining me today is J. Robert Parker, clinical hypnotherapist at Twin Ravens Hypnotherapy and Research, to share how hypnotherapy works and how it might help you. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you very much for having me on. Howdy, howdy.
So now I've listened to different hypnotherapy recordings. Either, you find them on YouTube or, I subscribe to Gaia. And although I've listened to them, a lot of the times I just listen to them, nothing happens. I don't know if it's really working or what's supposed to happen. So how does hypnotherapy actually work?
First of all, I hate pre-recorded hypnosis. This idea that a pre-recorded thing could put you in trance, but could put a large portion of the population in trance, like it doesn't really work like that. To me, hypnosis and hypnotherapy is something that you need to be engaged in actively. You need to know something about that person to be able to properly speak to their subconscious. And you might luck out and find recordings that actually do speak to you, but that's probably not going to happen.
I'm actually
What
really
is
happy to hear that, because I used to think there was something wrong with me.
no,
It's like,
no.
why can't I make this work?
Well, to make things easier on you, and one of the things I always like to throw out there pretty quick is hypnosis is natural. You're actually in state twice a day at minimum. 30 minutes before you go to sleep and 30 minutes after you wake up, you are in the observable theta state of trance. That's why morning affirmations and nightly affirmations are considered important, because you are quite literally giving your subconscious suggestions for the day or the night, whatever it may be. And that's one of the things I like to emphasize, because hypnosis is not metaphysical. Hypnosis is not a party trick. Hypnosis is a scientifically researched and accepted function of the human brain, which can be utilized for positive change. It's natural. We are in it at least twice a day, as I said, some of us in it much, much more. There's even a small subset of the population that can live in it. Um, that is something that has to be addressed in hypnotherapy, and there's things you could do about it. You're just not permanently stuck in trance. But the portion of the population referred to as somnambulists, which is about the 5 to 10%, which is the most hypnotically suggestible, especially if they live in a large city uh, with a lot of input around them, they are very prone to be put into overload and go into a hyper suggestible state. Um, and there's ways to figure out what you are on my website. There is a test which I ask all of my clients to take that is for your hypnotic suggestibility. And basically what suggestibility means is the way you learn. Um, because this the same way you learn is it's how you process information. So it's how you enter into hypnosis. So it's there's a lot of learning about yourself, at least when working with me, that comes from hypnotherapy because a lot of it has to do with things about your behavior, your thinking, your learning. Uh, I've come to learn that there are some hypnotherapists out there that just give you suggestions. That's all they really do. Like, you want to quit smoking, so we're going to put you in trance and give you suggestions to quit smoking. That'll never work. That might work for a small fraction of the population, and everyone else is going to quit for a week and go right back to it. Um, what what true hypnotherapy is getting to the root causes of issues, whatever it may be. And uh, I was educated at a postgraduate hypnotherapy college via a 720-hour program. So all of these different aspects of hypnotherapy I was taught. And it's not just trance. Trance is easy. Like I said, trance is a natural state. I can teach my children how to trance somebody in an hour or two. And what what the true purpose and skill of hypnotherapy is knowing how to speak the language of the subconscious, and more specifically of your subconscious. Not it goes back to the pre-recorded thing. They don't know how your subconscious interprets information, how it must be spoken to. And that's something that can only be learned by interaction. Um, the first half of a hypnotherapy session looks very similar to a standard therapy session in that we're just talking. I'm asking you questions, I'm asking how you feel about things, and we are having a discussion. But that entire time, I am observing and noting your language, your metaphors, uh, your emphasis, and that gives me more of a path to speak directly to your subconscious, because the language that is used best to speak to your subconscious is your language. An example of that is, say you come to me for smoking and you refer to smoking as a pain in your ass. I am going to, in hypnosis, refer to smoking as a pain in your ass because that is how you describe your problem. Um, and again, how can a pre recorded thing do that? And I will sometimes give my clients myself pre recorded sessions, but that's only because I've already learned your language. That recorded session is a portion of a session I have done with you. It simply acts as reinforcement. So this pre-recorded thing is custom. It is yours. It is to a voice and to a pattern that you have already entered this state doing. Um, how can you have the trust and authority required to bring about hypnosis to if you're just listening to some random douchebag on YouTube? Um,
And you know that, and that's the question, and it always led me to wonder if everybody can be hypnotized
mhm.
and can be brought into that stance, or if, as I said earlier, if I'm broken and it just doesn't work on me.
If you could not be hypnotized, you would never sleep.
Oh, okay.
Um, so
That's good to know.
uh,
I don't
there's
sleep. I don't sleep very well, but I do sleep.
well, I could help with that,
I'm
but
thinking you might need to.
I so there was this. There's so many misconceptions about hypnosis, and I've learned them and I've addressed them. And one of the old myths is that only 80% of the population can be hypnotized. And what that comes from is the old schools of hypnosis only use literal direct language. You are feeling sleepy, commanding language, authoritative language. And that's going to work for about 80% of the population. The other 20% are a different suggestibility type that are high enough on that scale that if you tell them to do something, if you tell them they're going to feel a certain way, nothing's going to happen. Not at all. And the the literal and metaphorical school of hypnosis that I come from has an adaptable language pattern. And the opposite of that authoritative speech that is used traditionally in old methods of hypnosis is then replaced with inferential speech. And what that means is instead of telling you your eyes are getting heavy, close them, you say, you may begin to feel your eyes getting heavy, like there's weights pulling down on your eyelids. If you so choose, you can allow them to close. So you're an emotional. You just want to close your eyes.
I was gonna
But
say, yeah, this could be really embarrassing if I inadvertently fall asleep while you're saying this.
oh, you won't fall asleep. You'll go into trance. I can snap you out of
That's
that
what
real
I mean,
quick.
and that would be
Oh,
a
it's common.
crazy ass
I
podcast.
oh, I could have conversational hypnosis is 100% a thing. Um
So okay, and that's kind of I've always had this thought when it's come to advertising. My background's in
you're right.
marketing. My husband's background,
You're
been
right.
in the
Whatever
advertising,
you're thinking, you're right.
and and the funny thing is that we spent so much time watching Netflix. You don't see commercials, and I purposely don't. I try and stay
Don't
away
you?
from commercials.
Don't you see commercials though?
Well, you see product placement.
Isn't that worse than a commercial?
Yes, I guess so. um, but recently, now that there's actually new TV out,
Mhm.
I'm PVRing TV shows, and I'm finding myself catching some of the commercials, and I'm like, do people
Um,
believe this bullshit?
advertising, media, politics, all of them use the the framework of hypnosis and trance and hypersuggestibility. And one of the things that I teach all of my clients is about all of the ways this happens. And I emphasize that once you begin working with this tool, once you become familiar with hypnosis, how you go there, what that means, what it can do, it becomes very easy to recognize it. And one of the things I tell people in a lot of interviews that I do and many of my clients is there is a game being played. And the other side knows it's being played and they know the rules. Most people don't even know there's a game being played and certainly don't even know the rules because you can absolutely bet your ass that marketing agencies and media companies and political parties know about hypersuggestibility and they know about what it takes to put you in that state. And once in that state, what you can do with that. And a very basic example of uh, the power of this is if I were to show you a bright yellow lowercase m on a red background, what does your mind immediately go to?
McDonald's.
And hamburgers and all of these things. That is the power of association. Corporate logos all work on the power of association. It's why slogans and imagery and jingles are so important. Jingles are nothing but associating sounds. It's literally a post hypnotic suggestion. It is an anchor. It is a tool that I normally use in session to bring about positive change. Only now, uh, you hear a certain song, you associate it with something. A whole generation of people can spell the word baloney because Oscar Mayer made a goddamn song about it.
Well, it's like as soon as you brought up jingles, what's stuck in my head now is two all beef patties.
Uh huh. Yep. Because we just talked
Who
about
who
McDonald's.
doesn't know that? Who doesn't
Yeah.
know that? It's like when you're watching, I don't know if you watch The Office, and they start
Yep. I've
singing
seen
the
it before.
jingle about,
Yep.
the Kit Kat bar, and nobody can
Yep.
remember what chocolate bar it is. It's like,
Yep.
how do you not know that?
It's once you once you come to learn the mechanics of this whole area of your mind, because it encompasses this whole area, and there's no word for it because it's not mental health and it's not emotional health. It's something different. It's like subconscious health, and it has to do with your associations. It has to do with your reactions. It has to do with the way that you process information, because everything in life, and I emphasize everything, is association. It is subconscious association and learned behavior based upon those associations. And the other thing that is involved is uh, the most important thing to your subconscious more than anything else at all. And that is this concept of homeostasis. And what that means is that is a fancy word for normal. It is what your subconscious perceives as its sense of self and normality. And this is the reason people will become successful. This is the reason that people will stay in abusive relationships. Uh, it's the reason for any of our behavior, because your subconscious gets this notion, this this framework of who we are and what our world is, and it will do anything and everything to preserve that normal, up to and including sabotage. That's why people will try and try and try to lose weight, stop smoking, become successful, all of these things, but they can't because they have not elevated that sense of homeostasis. If you think about any time in your life that you have gotten out of a bad situation that you've been stuck in, it wasn't logic that got you there. It wasn't learning some new revelation. It was that situation became intolerable because you weren't there anymore. You know you deserved better and that your life should be something different. So it wasn't a matter of choices. It was a matter of this is not my life. You elevated your homeostasis and were able to move beyond it. One of the things that I ask all of my clients when these things are involved is, if I gave you everything you ever wanted tomorrow, would you elevate yourself to that new way of living? Or would you try to drag it down with you and wonder why it didn't work out like you thought? And that's a clear example of homeostasis. People want all of these incredible things and deserve them, but are they ready for them? Do they truly believe that that is them? And
So
one
when
of
you
the
mean
interest, oh, go ahead.
when you mean ready, are you referring to, can I actually see myself at that next level?
Mhm. Have you
Or
subconsciously accepted that this is where you should be?
so I can be, I think that I believe in myself to be at this level, but there's something in my subconscious that's saying, no way,
That's
girlfriend.
not who we are.
Oh
That's not who we
shit.
are. Yeah. And one of the things that has to be emphasized is the concept of pain and pleasure means something totally different to your subconscious,
Ooh.
because pain to your subconscious is the unknown. Uh, Pleasure is the known, the familiar, which is why that even though you consciously, for example, an abusive relationship, you know this is bad, you know this is not benefiting you, but you can't leave because it's change. And even getting the shit kicked out of you is less frightening than change. And people think oftentimes that fear means there's something wrong. That's not. That's normal. That is part of your subconscious drive to maintain your normality. And Your subconscious isn't doing it out of viciousness, it's not doing it to harm you. Everything that your subconscious does, it is trying to help you survive. And it's kind of a remnant of our shitty past because you had to become acclimated to horrible situations. Think about the way winter used to be for the majority of human history. It was miserable, it was shitty. You were going to lose friends and maybe a finger. So there
And you
was
had to
no
walk two
telling.
miles uphill to school.
Exactly. And it just sucked, but you had to become accustomed to it. So this idea of homeostasis of our subconscious drive, it really a lot of it goes down to the adaptability of mankind. And it's an old survival instinct, I believe, to simply accept bad situations. Because sometimes for the majority of our history, you kind of had to.
It's kind of a
And
depressing thought, though.
it's a depressing thought. And I can give you a worse one.
Oh, please do.
We don't have free will. Um,
What?
so that's kind of a double-edged statement here. There's a good part to that statement. So if everything that about us is subconscious association, when do you choose? Name foods you don't like.
Food I don't like. Oh, now I can't think of one because you asked me.
Well,
I
if
don't
it's
say I don't like peas.
okay, why?
Well, as my husband says, he doesn't like peas because they explode in his mouth, or he always eats
Well,
shitty canned peas or something like that.
so choose to like them,
Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
doesn't it? It doesn't
No,
work that way consciously, and it
right.
doesn't work that way because you don't have free will. If all of these these learned behaviors all add up to a complex algorithm of response, that is not free will. That is just very complex programming.
It's
Uh,
conditioning.
this conditioning, this concept of no free will can be displayed with mentalism. This idea that your behavior path is so predictable that a stage performer can make it look like magic. And the other side to this, as bleak and depressing as this concept is, uh, you could choose to have it because, like you said, it doesn't work that way. But what if it did? What if you could make the choice to like peace? Because you can. That's what hypnotherapy is. Hypnotherapy is the expression of your free will. Previously, we behaved and thought a way that we were simply just, it's how I think, it's how I am. That's what we're able to tell ourselves. Okay, so don't. So you want to be a certain way, so you want to like something, so you want to quit something, so do it. And now you have this capacity to make that choice. And the reason that I cannot simply just tell you to like or not like this thing is because the conscious mind cannot affect change upon the subconscious mind. That that is the reason the critical filter exists between those two. However, in hypnosis, the critical filter is removed and an external source can speak to your subconscious mind and can alter its associations and its learned behaviors to your specifications. Um, One of the biggest myths of all time about hypnosis is that it's mind control. It's actually the exact opposite. It's getting control of your own mind. It's learning why you think the way you do. It's choosing to make healthy changes to your thinking. If you don't like the way that you think, there's no reason to continue that. Like I said, simply choose to like peas. That seems an absurd statement. You can't simply choose to change what you like and don't like, but you can. That you absolutely can.
So when you start working with somebody, because as we're sitting here talking, I have list of things, wouldn't it be cool if I could deal with dot, dot, dot. When you start working with somebody, is it like an overall process in helping somebody tackle things, or do you tackle them one problem or situation at a time?
Depends. So a it's very much depends, because so many times people will come to me with this list, this broad list of all of these things that they want to improve in their life, that they wish they could do better, such and such. And it all comes down to one thing. It's all a single learned behavior, a single association or event. And that just kind of, once you readdress that singular event or behavior, there is kind of a cascade of things that begin to fall into place. And it really depends on what the issue is. Um, and for example, I work with a lot of fear and trauma. And with a trauma, somebody that is suffering from trauma, uh, I will address the symptoms first, uh, instead of the root issue, to be able to give them some relief from the anxiety or the dread or the flashbacks or whatever have you. And from there, once they have the tools to cope more, then I will go back and readdress those root issues. But for example, if somebody comes in and says, uh, I have PTSD and anxiety and I want to work on my anxiety, you're not going to do a damn thing about your anxiety until you address that PTSD, because that 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 anxiety is not a cause. That anxiety is a symptom of a cause. And that's what a lot of my work comes in, is I find out why. I find out exactly why this behavior is happening. And the story that I mention often in interview, I've got her permission to tell this story, but I had a woman who wanted to stop smoking, tried for years, couldn't do it. Tried every available option, and of course, as I so often hear, I'm her last resort. And I I come to speak to her, and over time, getting to know her and working with her, I come to find out that her grandfather, who she loved very, very, very dearly, and who she lost when she was a child, um, smoked Marlboro cigarettes. Can you guess what kind of cigarettes she smoked? And we came to find out that this inability to quit smoking came from her unwillingness to let go of this memory of her grandfather. So all we did is we did some homework, or she did, and we figured out what kind of cologne he wore. So whenever she would think about him, instead of pulling out a cigarette and not knowing why, she just kept a small handkerchief in her purse with a little bit of that cologne on it. And whenever she needed that calm that the cigarettes would bring, she'd just smell that cologne. It would do the exact same thing. She hadn't smoked since.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, say for example, if I have a vision for my future, as we said earlier, I want to up level,
Mhm.
but I still feel like it's somewhat out of reach. Is that probably coming because I don't actually believe that it's true for me? And then how would the process of hypnotherapy start to work at that?
Well, one of the first things that I would do, if you have a distinct goal that you're aiming for, is show it to you, let you experience it and see it, let you meet that version of yourself that has accomplished those goals, let you experience what it's like to be that person, how you feel, what you think, how you look. And that was one of the things done for me, and it was a incredibly profound part of my own therapy. And from there, it's about elevating your homeostasis, like we were talking about, elevating this sense of not only deserve this, but this is an inevitability. This isn't an if I can type thing. This is the future. And one of the important things for that point is assume it's already happened and everything but the actual reality. There is an interesting thing in your mind that it is usually referred to as the law of attraction,
Mm.
but it is actually called the reticular activating system. It is a function of your mind that once you have set a goal, begins to filter out and filter in information specifically related to that goal. So you literally have a function of your mind that is singular focus. Once you choose to want something, once you have truly set a goal, your mind is capable of a laser focus upon it based upon that system. We call it the RAS system. And that once you engage that, once you have someone's reticular system playing along, you've it's basically they're an arrow and you've just pointed them to it because your RAS system just assumes it's already happened and is just putting things in place to make sure you get there. Uh, it's like an art. The way to draw a long line isn't to look at the line, it's to look at the future. It's to look at the end point and allow everything to fall into place. Once your goal is set on a thing, you basically just let your reality at that point adjust because in your head this has already happened. This is already a thing and your mind is going to subconsciously guide you to this goal via this system. And I'm not very big on the law of attraction because to me, that's a notion. To me, the reticular activating system is science. This is the reason that this thing is happening.
Yeah, and I see a lot of people talking about the law of attraction and
Because it works,
manifesting and
kind
things
of.
like that. It does, but it can also lead to a lot of frustration because when it doesn't work for you, why? And then you feel like a failure, and then everything goes off the tracks. Then
Yeah, because you might not have you've not elevated your homeostasis. Anytime there's a stuck moment in your life where you just can't seem to change, it goes back to the H word. It's always the same. It's always this notion that you hold subconsciously that this is who we are. We don't change. This is what we do. And it's it has nothing to do with forcing yourself to do anything. Uh, I don't ever force behaviors. That's not the way that it works. For an example, with weight loss, I don't take anything away. That's a sure way to fail. My entire weight loss program is based upon adding behaviors, adding foods and habits. And just by the natural way your mind works, once these new behaviors are in play, there's no need to take away these old behaviors because they simply get put away. They there's no need to take them away because you naturally put them away. And when you choose to put away unhealthy behaviors and practices, they don't come back. And it becomes your homeostasis and it works the same with smoking. It works the same way with any behavior. It is not about taking things away. It is about adding new things and growing and letting those old parts just fall off.
and it's funny when you talk about diet and choosing. It was about 5 or 6 years ago. I chose to become vegetarian,
Mhm,
and I used to love a nice steak.
mhm.
I cannot. I'm almost at the point now where sometimes meat or the thought of eating it repulses me.
Yeah, because
But it
that
was it was a
is
choice, and I made that. transition. And the
Exactly.
thought of eating meat now, consciously eating meat, I mean, sometimes you
Now,
get given something and it's made with chicken broth. What are you going to do?
I
But actually,
do have to wind that back because you use the C word, choice, which implies free will. So I like to play Grim
yeah,
Reaper on this. So why did you make that choice? What series of associations made you turn to that?
turn to being a
Huh?
vegetarian.
Yeah.
Um, Originally it started off as a health choice,
A
but
health choice.
then what really solidified it was I'm a massive animal person. And I
Hmm.
started seeing, well, if I keep cats and dogs and I feed the squirrels in my backyard and raccoons and what
So
have you, then how,
you associated meat with cruelty.
yes.
And therefore,
And those animals that I love. I mean, I rescue injured animals and would bring them to the wildlife center. How could I possibly think it was okay to eat a steak?
so it wasn't a choice.
It That's where I got to, but at the beginning it started off as what kept me vegetarian was,
But there was that beginning of kindness to animals that
yeah,
snowballed that association into now I don't eat meat.
yeah.
Yeah, so there you
And
go.
it's funny because some people will say like, I could never give up steak. And I'm like, well, I didn't think I could either, but it's just what I do now. I don't
I
even
mean,
think.
I'm not even vegetarian, and I find myself not eating meat most of the time.
Yeah.
Like it's unnecessary to constantly eat meat and kind of bad for you. And it helps that I live in a very rural area and there's not a lot of fast food.
Yeah, same here.
Uh yeah. So
You're 45
bec
minutes to the closest fast food.
yeah, actually, me too.
Yeah.
About 45 minutes or an hour.
Yep.
But this it's not even a choice based upon morality or anything. It's just it's not that big of a deal to not eat meat. You unless you have this association that meat is part of a constant diet, then you're
Well,
not going to have it.
going back to, you know, people telling us what we should be doing
Mhm,
and the influence of advertising and marketing. Well, I don't think there's a person on the planet right now that wasn't taught the food pyramid
mhm,
that tells you what you're supposed to be eating. And sure,
yeah,
there's a small sort of footnote that says if you eat beans or whatever, but the
yeah.
entire, I'm in Canada and our entire Canada food pyramid is actually bullshit marketing.
Mhm.
That's all
I
it
think
is.
ours was paid for by God. I forget what industry it was that created the food pyramid, but
I think it
it's
was the dairy industry.
I want to
It
say
was
eggs were associated with it, so
it was
probably
something like dairy
no, it was
wheat.
the dairy industry.
I think
It
because
was the dairy.
they're like the mafia, and they
Oh,
like,
I originally come from Texas,
oh,
and defaming beef is a crime.
oh, I know. I think Oprah learned that lesson.
Yes, yes, she did. They do not fuck around with their beef,
No,
and it's it's a good example of association because they made an effort to make meat part of the American homeostasis because homeostasis extends beyond just you and your own psychology. It uh it extends onto social and cultural norms, political norms. Are you familiar with the concept of an Overton window?
no.
An Overton window is the window of acceptable political discourse in a country. And that is what determines what is left and what is right, which is why left wing in America is pretty pretty good right to anyone else's standards, but it's considered left wing here because the window of political discourse within this country has moved so far to the right that even centrist right wing thinking is considered radical left because of the Overton window. Whereas you go to, say, Greece, uh, the radical left is throwing a brick through your window. And so it's quite a bit different. And that has to do with cultural norms.
Sort of like a
And
baseline.
yes, and those
Okay.
norms will actually affect the behavioral system that I work under, because there's something called cultural incongruencies, which is where, for an example, because of my suggestibility, I'm very reserved. I do not interact with people. Uh, I'm what's called an emotional. On the other side of that, you have a physical, which is very forward, very aggressive, very social. America is a physical country. So all of my life, I've had to adopt physical traits to be able to get along professionally and socially, which have led to uh, weird things in my behavior. Because anytime you have a defense, which is dropping an aspect of your behavior, or an incongruency, which is adding it, it's it doesn't go well because you're not acting according to your own rule set. Um,
It's
so
when you're trying to be somebody that you're not.
yeah,
It
basically.
just you feel wrong, you feel
Mhm.
bad, it just doesn't sit well. And
Exactly.
that's because okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
And being reserved in America is considered weird, and because there's a physical culture. An example of an emotional culture would be like Korea, where some of the aspects of an emotional culture are a sense of for the good of all, that you don't be loud and express yourself and all of these things, that being this outgoing person is considered kind of rude and abrasive, that you're considered that you're supposed to be a little quieter, and you're supposed to do things more for the sense of the greater whole. And shame tends to be a very large aspect of an emotional culture. This idea that you do or do not do something not because uh, you will be punished if you do or don't, but because there is a sense of cultural shame revolved around it. Um, an example of this at play is Russia has some very emotional aspects to its culture. And one of those is you very much are supposed to respect your mother and father and elders even onto their old age. You do not put them in a home. That to push that responsibility of care to the government is very shameful, and you will be judged for that, even though you didn't do anything wrong, so to speak. No one's going to punish you. It is considered shameful, and that shame is part of the thing that creates this culture of respect for your elders. uh we don't have that in America. uh so different things happen.
Yeah,
But
no, no kidding. Uh, okay, this has been such a fascinating conversation. Um, First off, do you have any final words of wisdom for our listeners? Any final thoughts?
don't eat yellow snow. Um, but the thing that I really like to leave people with is a reminder of that ability to choose, to be able to choose, that you you have this capacity built into your mind to be able to act how you want to act and think how you want to think. Do not think that the way that you act and behave now is what you're stuck in. Um, this There are choices you can make to overcome fears, to overcome limitations, to get better at a game. Like there's no end of uses that hypnotherapy has, and I encourage anyone who wants to know if and how they could benefit from it. My consultation is free. It's a free 15-minute phone call. I am going to start here soon also uh, I'm going to experiment with it a little bit at first, but for now, I'm running twice a month free group hypnosis sessions on Meetup. And it's nothing particularly targeted. We're not going to fix or address any issues, but it's group relaxation and kind of let you experience that state a little bit. And that's free. Again, I'll send you to the link to share it and all that, but I encourage anyone to do that. But otherwise, my website's twinravens.org. Uh, Check it out. I keep my old interviews on there. I even trance people in a couple of them for funsies. Uh, and anyone that's got any questions, anything they want to know, I encourage anyone to reach out to me. There's multiple ways to contact me through my website, and I would love to hear from anyone.
I am definitely going to be reaching out and following up with you because I'm very interested in pursuing this. If you're listening and you want to connect with Robert, make sure you check out the show notes. I will have all of the links in there. And Robert, thank you so much for joining me today.
Very welcome.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creative.
Life is like a roller coaster,